not the absence of beauty, but perhaps it is the place where beauty can be known. And I really, that resonated with me. I agree that suffering and how you handle yourself in that time, how you handle your family, those types of matters really is a beautiful thing, and that Brittany Maynard, is getting rid of that beauty that will never be known.
Yeah, but Brittany did it because she wanted to show others that they did have a choice. If they wanted to die, they could do it. She's like, hey, freedom. But she has the different view on it. So.
What in your mind is the difference between deciding to end treatment or not pursue treatment and physician-assisted suicide?
So I think that's kind of like action versus inaction. Physician-assisted suicide is like pushing someone off a cliff compared to stopping someone from like falling. You can't get in trouble for just watching someone fall off a cliff because they're gonna do it. I guess it's inevitable.
Yeah.
But actually helping them, pushing them, that's just
I agree.
pushing them towards falling and killing themselves.
I mean, do you think there are similar Christian principles at play, though? Like if somebody, say they are diagnosed with cancer, and they say, if you'll undergo chemotherapy, you have a 50% chance of beating this and living. But the person doesn't want to go do chemotherapy, and so without chemotherapy, they're going to die in the next 6 months to a year. But they say, I'm making the choice to not have chemotherapy. I'm going to enjoy the last 6 months to a year. I mean, isn't that somewhat akin to choosing to end your life? So why would we permit that, somebody to deny chemotherapy and end their life sooner, but not allow a physician to be involved in
I
helping
think
them?
it all goes back to choice, of your personal choice. I mean, if that person,
And there still can be a miracle created within that time. Because I just saw a movie trailer the other day, and this little girl had a terminal illness, but she fell off a tree and hit her head just right, and she lived. Didn't have the terminal illness. I don't remember the name of it, but I saw that, and I thought it was really cool, and I thought it played to this well.
Also, legally, we can't force someone to undergo treatment just because they don't want to.
Yeah.
But why not? I mean, if the government has an interest and a respect for life, couldn't the government say you got to do this? Like if you're eligible for chemotherapy and it will arguably make you live longer, then you have to do it. Like you don't get a choice. If a doctor says it's going to make you live longer, then you have to do it. Why would the government not get involved in that, but get involved in physician-assisted suicide?
I mean, you couldn't really give any consequences to someone for not following through with that. Like, you can't put them in jail and they're going to die there anyways. You can't just strap someone down and force them to go through chemotherapy.
well, and it's not a 100% chance that the chemo's gonna work. I mean, in that 6-month frame, they could, I mean, something could happen, you never know, but, you know, unless the government has a 100% chance of that chemo's gonna work and you're gonna get, you know, healed, then you can't force someone to do that if it's not 100%.
Let's say it is that situation then. So it's 100% chemotherapy will heal this person. I realize this is hypothetical and it
Yeah.
doesn't really happen. But 100% chemotherapy will heal this person, they'll overcome cancer, and they'll be able to live 20 more years. But they say, I don't want to do it. I just don't want to. You know, I've lived a good life so far. I don't care to live 20 more years. I'm happy to die in a year.
I mean, I think in a human, like, thinking, not many people would do that. I mean, if it was a 100% chance of living, I don't know many people that would say, I don't want to live anymore. But I don't know how to answer your question of what they would.
Well, and so I guess that's my question, though, or my point, is that if someone wants to decide that just
Yeah.
because they're done living,
Then that's-
they can. And that's legal in every single state to say, I don't want to do chemotherapy. So why would we rob them of the choice if they have a terminal illness in Kentucky or 45 other states or 44 other states to say you can't make that choice because the circumstances are slightly different? Am I making sense?
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
why is it that we're regulating one thing but not the other?
I think it's because they're naturally going to die. You're not ending that point of life. That's just, you let them live it out until how long they want to live and then they die. That's the natural process of life. So.
You're not accelerating it
Right,
by doing
exactly.
That's right.
I think what you said, active versus inactive. That was a really good point. I felt like that was a good way to answer that, to say we're not going to actively engage in ending your life, but we're going to let you not hasten it, you know, as far as by inaction. You know, we're not going to let you force the end.
Logan, you're really into politics, so I'm gonna pick on you for just a second. In your opinion, should politicians make these kind of decisions for us?
No, I don't. I think that it should be up to the popular vote within that state. With Oregon, that's how it came up twice, actually, is that it was too close to call at first, and then a couple of years later, they allowed it to go through with the popular vote in like a general election or a primary or something like that. But usually, like with presidential elections and things like that, they don't really take stances on this because it's a states' right issue.
So if, I know you said there's only 5 states now that have it legalized, but let's say all 50 declare it, or for some reason the federal government decides that it's a federal issue and they say the United States, it's now legal, like other countries have done. What do you think a decision like that, how would it affect our country?
I think there'd be probably, even though we don't think it's morally right, but I think there would be probably a lot more deaths that way if it was legal everywhere. Because if people then had the option of doing that, they wouldn't have to move places, they would probably die sooner because of that. There would be more deaths because of assisted suicide.
Every year in each of those states, it increases by like a few hundred.
Yeah,
a few
there was
hundred.
recently a little under 1,000 people in the U.S. that died this way.
It just increases every year, so it's just like
A lot more.
allowing people to have that option. I think it just would be negative for the country in general.
Yeah.
You mentioned mental illness. You cannot be classified, whatever, I can't think of the right word right now. But if someone has been given 6 months or less to live, wouldn't depression come into play regardless? And how does depression come into their decision in the states that it's legal?
Yeah, so there's this at the beginning when the first and second proposal, there's a psychiatric evaluation between like the physicians themselves and make sure that the condition isn't like affecting their minds, because like some types of cancers can like metastasize, I think, to your brain and impair your judgment and things like that. So they make sure that you are absolutely in your right mind, and they ask you multiple times. The physicians can't give you this option. It has to be something that you seek out.
Do you think I could be coached on the right answers? Say I want to end my life, and I know that I'm depressed. Could I?
You probably
Somehow.
could be, but I think that's just probably something that comes part of it. Yeah.
You mentioned Brittany Maynard earlier, and I remember a few years ago when that happened, it was such a big deal. And I think the media kind of fed everyone's obsession with that. How do you think news media or even social media has affected the issue of physician-assisted suicide, and can it take it one way or the other in the future?
So social media is a big part of our generation, and it's how a lot of the youth get their information, whether it be reliable or not. Physician-assisted suicide is not as, right now, a huge talked about thing because it's only legal in 5 states and because it's just like not that debated currently. But I think that starting of the conversation led to organizations being created. Like there's a Brittany Maynard organization, foundation. There's a few others in the country that it just kind of raised awareness and kind of did start the conversation. But we're not like in a full-fledged debate. Riots. It's definitely in partisan politics right now, but it's not like this big factor in parties currently.
Yeah. I mean, there's only, that I could find, 2 organizations. There's one promoting it, and then there's one like helping against it. There's the Death with Dignity National Center, and it promotes death with dignity overall, just saying, yeah, you should have the right to do this if you want to. And then there's the National Disability Rights Organization, and they basically just says you're not dead yet. Don't force yourself to be dead when you're not. So I can only find 2 organizations that even are about it.
Let me ask you about that organization, Death with Dignity, and that was a big campaign with Brittany Maynard. Was they rebranded it basically, called it Death to Die with Dignity. She's like, I want to die with dignity. So think about that phrase. What did that do to the public perception, by rebranding it?
I think it was just like a euphemism.
Hmm?
I think is that the right word, euphemism? That it just kind of made it seem less bad.
Yeah.
When you think of the word dignity, what does that conjure in your mind?
Makes me think like if I'm like someone terminally ill and am like going to start acting like not like a real person anymore, somebody wants to die before they get to that state, I think was her take on it, her thought.
It makes
She
it seem
wants,
like it's like a good, better option
Yeah.
that you're driving with like this grander compared to.
yeah.
So what does that say about the people who chose not that option?
Well, like, sorry, to play along with what they
Yeah.
were saying, like, death with dignity, you want to look like you're dying and with pride and you're happy that, I feel like they want to, it makes it seem like when you live, you're dying as a coward or you're weak. So just to play along with it.
Yeah, so what does it say about those folks who didn't choose to end it early? What is that a carte blanche statement about those people who chose not to go out that way?
I mean, yeah, I could say that those people like didn't want to die with dignity. They could say, okay, they chose to go sad and make their family miserable. but
Yeah.
That's what it could be saying.
Yeah, so
That's not the true meaning.
let's say your spouse, had terminal cancer and it was a horrible ending. I mean, it was hard and it was harsh. I mean, would you be a little bit offended by someone saying, I died with dignity, my spouse versus yours? What do you think that does to the survivors?
I mean, so far, I don't think that the stigma of dying but naturally, I don't think that the death of dignity has like leaked into that perception yet, because I still do think that people believe that natural death, that suffering, that allows your family to have closure and things like that. I still think people think it's a noble experience. When I was reading articles online, Brittany Maynard and Kara Tippett, who is like her kind of the opposition to her,
Yeah.
they both were being praised for their by the same people. They were like, if this is what she wants, okay. If this is what she wants, okay. They're both beautiful options. And
So let me ask you this: why is the American perception? We're going to think critically here. Why is American perception okay with both?
I think right now it's just like a big choice movement, free will, things like that.
Yeah. It's all
Almost
about.
with like the new age believement, they say, okay, you believe in this, okay, you found your spiritual realm, you're happy, good job. Like, that's sort of what they're thinking with that new movement. That's
Yes.
what more people are moving to.
The autonomy of the individual. I'm king, and who are you to say otherwise? Doesn't matter what is true. Doesn't matter what is right. Matters what is right for you. Although I would like you, I read a lot of articles in rebuttal to Maynard, and there were people saying, "Look, to say my husband didn't die with dignity by changing this terminology." Let me tell you, he did have dignity, and he fought to the end, and I saw a lot of that as well. And so, I mean, it's a little bit. Think about. All right, so take that, and I think need to understand this issue. They had to put it out in public and have different terms. Can you think of another issue in the U.S. where we've done that in the last 5-10 years?
Abortion, we have pro-choice is the name for the killing of babies, fetuses.
Even saying that, even saying it's a fetus. If you want it, it's a
Baby.
child. If you don't, it's a
It
fetus.
was actually it's a euphemism to make it seem like it's not as bad.
It's good. Any other examples? I think of one in your generation that's been huge, which is right now. It used to be gay marriage, but now it's marriage equality. Well, who's against marriage equality? Who's against that, right? And so, very similar line of thinking, way we go about things.
It's legal in 5 states you mentioned. Are there any other states out there right now that this is on the?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's actually 14, I believe, that are on the docket. It's like Nevada, a lot of the northeastern states, Nevada, Colorado, and that Midwest area.
Where's Kentucky? Have we ever?
It's not on the docket right now.
Not-
The only southern state right now is Tennessee.
Interesting. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's geographical?
I just think it's like the Bible Belt sort of. The more southern states have this religion that usually the Christians are against it.
Is there a reason you think that I mean, we've talked about several other hot button issues right now, like, I mean, gender identity is big right now. That people should have a choice about their gender identity. And I think the states would respect that. If an individual wants to change their gender identity, they can easily change their gender. They can choose that. And it makes them happy, and it's this individual autonomy thing where we can say, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to live. Why do we not see as much lobbying in the physician-assisted suicide realm? I mean, isn't that the epitome of individual choice and autonomy to decide when to end your life? You know, I've had enough. This is great. I mean, I realize the religious principles, but in our world where we've got all this swirling right now, why is that not on the docket in every state?
I think because our country's kind of like the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that someone picking their gender, whatever makes them happiest, is what people are kind of like lobbying for and that sort of thing. But with killing yourself, that's not life, liberty, and
But
pursuit.
I could see it coming up soon, being a big issue. I just think people don't want to play with life too much right now, but as our world is getting like riskier with things like changing gender, I think that this could definitely come up soon.
Yeah, the
I
social
think-
climates are definitely changing in the world. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's easier to talk about just like lighter subjects, like, you know, not that those are lighter subjects, but like transgender and gay marriage and all that. Death is, you know, a scary thing for human. I don't think, you know, many people want to talk about it, so.
And do you think that that's a great point. And do you think that the fear of death
Yeah.
also drives the policy to a fair extent? That as a general population, you know, and there's Christian views and there's other religions out there that have different views of an afterlife and that sort of thing, but there seems to be a general fear of death.
Right.
And so we really don't want to let anybody die quicker than they should.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that's partly plays into the
Yeah,
policies
'cause
as well?
it's, you know, there's so much unknown about death that people don't know about, so, yeah, basically, yeah.
And it's final.
Right, exactly.
Do you think, just one last question on the Christian principles, do you think there can be a view that the Christian principles are at play in like the Death with Dignity group?
That we could, as Christians, support it.
Right, yeah. That as Christians, I can support physician-assisted suicide and still be a good Christian.
Personally, there's just some examples in the Bible of how life is sacred, and I don't think it'd be morally right as a Christian to.
I mean, I have something here. It says, the overall fact that God is a sovereign and how a natural death provides, that death is supposed to be a natural and not a forced thing. So, I mean, in the whole Christian belief, there's not really anything you can play along with that, other than the fact that God made us to have a natural death in His timing. And you shouldn't, that's not dying with dignity to change that.
Let me ask you this. Let's say your mom is in a coma, you know, no brain activity, but heart's beating, lungs breathing, body's physically healthy, but no brain activity, you know, and it's gone on a long time. And the only thing keeping them alive is they are on, obviously, getting fed. This happened with Terry Schiavo and others. Do you have a problem with them removing that feeding tube at that point?
Yeah, that wouldn't be considered physician-assisted suicide because it's not the person giving it.
Unless the person before this happened to them stated, if I'm in this state for however long, and if I'm in this state for however long, take me off of it because I just let me die.
And that's
Okay.
all of euthanasia and what.
All right, so I've had a major accident. I'm in and out. I'm like, no matter what, I don't want to be put on life support in any way, shape, or form. But then I start breathing. I go unconscious. My brain stops working, and the only thing that would keep me alive is food. Are you okay with not giving that food?
I think that was that natural progression of that they're in all, I guess, the brain activity, they're gone, I guess.
Exactly. They have died. Like if you take them off of that life support, they have their final death. You're not ending their life early. it's kind of like a,
It's
like
like
you
what
said, it's a
it's what
progression
you
of life.
define death as. Is
Yeah.
it like when your heart stops beating, or is it when you're like
Yeah.
mentally not there anymore?
That is one of the issues. How do we find death? But then what's the difference between taking them off the feeding tube and